The boy merely executed the simplest draw slash, yet it greatly shocked the woman who was a swordmaster. It looked as though Ronan only swung his sword once, but in reality, it was 3 strikes, and he even slowed the final strike down to the absolute slowest. It was as if he was afraid the professors of the Empire's top academy wouldn't be able to see it clearly. This arrogant behavior infuriated the swordmaster, who sternly demanded to know who he learned his swordplay from. However, Ronan had never systematically studied swordsmanship. His skills were entirely honed through hundreds of battles in his previous life, and Ronan was able to return to the present all thanks to a woman's kiss. It was because 3 incredibly powerful 4-winged giants had suddenly descended upon the world. They wreaked havoc within the Empire, destroying more than half of the Empire's territory in just 1 week. In order to stop the giants, the penal battalion Ronan belonged to was completely wiped out. After Ronan exhausted all his strength to kill the last giant, his life also reached its end. Ronan stood alone, looking at the tragic scene before him, feeling an overwhelming desolation in his heart. But right then, a strange voice suddenly rang out. "It was my, Ahayut's negligence. I didn't expect there to be a human as powerful as you here." Ronan turned his head in horror, only to find that the source of the voice was the already dead giant. Enraged, Ronan stomped on its face. "Because of you, half the Empire has become a barren graveyard. Why aren't you dead yet?" Saying this, Ronan revealed a mocking expression. "Do you know how the other 2 giants died? One was burned to ashes by the flames of a red dragon, and the other was sealed forever by a magic stone." He thought these words would enrage the giant, but it was not surprised. "Powerful human, do not use shallow words to describe the truth of the matter. The children of the stars share their senses. I know how they died, and I also know that the people who fought them have also been entirely wiped out. This land no longer has any powerhouses like you. Therefore, the world you fought to the death to protect will eventually be submerged by starlight." Before it could finish, Ronan beheaded it with a single swing. Afterward, Ronan began to wander aimlessly, wanting to look at this world a little more in his final moments. Just as Ronan was immersed in sorrow, he vaguely heard a faint cry for help. Thus, dragging his heavily injured body, Ronan followed the sound. However, the person in front of him shocked him greatly. He didn't expect Grand General Adeshan to still be alive. This brought Ronan a slight sense of comfort. Seeing Ronan arrive, the Grand General hastily asked if they had won the war. Upon learning that Ronan had slain the last giant, the Grand General felt a massive weight lift off her shoulders. "Thank you so much, Private First Class Ronan." Hearing this, Ronan took the opportunity to make a request. "Since you are so grateful to me, could you give my comrades a proper burial? In the past, the corpses of penal soldiers were simply thrown away, but this time they performed exceptionally well. I think they deserve a proper burial." To this, the Grand General stated that she was also on the verge of collapsing, and that it would be best for Ronan to handle it himself. As soon as she finished speaking, Ronan began coughing violently. "You might be overestimating me. With my current condition, I'm just surviving 1 second at a time. It's a pity I still have so many things left undone. It truly is a regret." Hearing this, the Grand General asked him what he would want to do if he could survive. At this topic, a glimmer of light flashed in Ronan's eyes. "Probably go to an academy to study. That was my late sister's wish, but it seems there's no chance for that now. Our family will be reuniting soon." Right as he said this, the sky suddenly cleared, casting down a few rays of dawn light. However, both of them widened their eyes in terror, because a terrifying 8-winged giant had appeared in the sky. They hadn't realized that the 4-winged giants they had fought to the death to kill weren't the ultimate form. The 8-winged one was. Furthermore, there were countless 4-winged followers descending alongside the 8-winged giant. At this moment, the Grand General's eyes were filled with despair. This was already her 3rd time fighting the giants, yet she hadn't expected it to end like this. But beside her, Ronan resolutely drew his sword, asking the Grand General to cast levitation magic to send him up for a final fight to the death. The Grand General was stunned, not expecting that even in the face of absolute despair, Ronan didn't have the slightest thought of retreating. Suddenly, the Grand General thought of something. She abruptly sat up and kissed Ronan, passing a bead into his mouth. "This is a bead that can reverse time 4 times. I have already used it 3 times. It is the secret to how a lowly tailor like me managed to become the Grand General. I leave the final use to you. I believe you are the key to stopping the world's destruction. Also, if you meet me again, please advise me to honestly just be a tailor." When Ronan opened his eyes again, he found himself back in his childhood hometown. Looking at the familiar scenery, Ronan found it hard to accept for a moment. He couldn't believe what the Grand General had said was actually true. There were still 10 years before the giants descended. Could he really do it all by himself? Suddenly, Ronan thought of something. If this was real, didn't it mean he could see his sister again? Thus, he hastily grabbed a tree branch and ran towards his house. On the way, a group of bullies caught his attention. Looking closely, Ronan was shocked. The bullied child wasn't being hung by a rope, but was suspended in midair using magic. Ronan found it somewhat unbelievable. One must know that even on the battlefield, such individuals were rare, high-level talents. To think someone in this small village village knew such rare magic. The blonde-haired leader was currently asking the boy if he had any money left. The boy said all his money had gone to buying medicine for his mother. Hearing this, the blonde flew into a rage and immediately ordered the boy casting the magic to hoist him higher into the sky. But the kind-hearted Asher didn't want to do it. Before Asher could dispel the magic, Ronan smacked the blonde on the head with his stick. "If you don't stop, that child will die." Hearing this, Asher quickly let the boy down. Seeing this, the blonde was displeased. "He tells you to stop and you stop? Do you not take me seriously, punk?" Ronan just pulled Asher over. "Ignore this trash for now. Tell me, where did you learn your telekinesis magic?" To this, Asher timidly replied that he had taught himself using a magic book bought from a wandering peddler. Hearing this, Ronan was deeply shocked. To think he could reach this level of mastery using such a cheap magic book. His intuition told him that Asher would definitely play a major role when facing the giants. Just then, the furious blonde drew his sword and viciously slashed at Ronan. Ronan saw through the blonde's flaws at a glance. Although the strike had plenty of power, the posture was an absolute mess. Ronan calmly stepped to the side and dodged it. Seeing this, the blonde panicked a little internally, but still assumed it was a coincidence. "Didn't think you'd have the luck to dodge that strike. As long as you kneel, kowtow, and beg for mercy, I'll just take one arm and spare your life. Furthermore, I'll take good care of your pretty older sister. Every time I see her, I can barely contain myself." Before he even finished speaking, one of the blonde's ears separated from his head. Ronan hadn't been this furious in a long time. His sister was his absolute limit. He would never allow anyone to defile her. This scene scared the nearby lackeys silly. To think he could swing a tree branch with the power of a sword. Knowing they were absolutely no match, they handed over all their money to the boy and ran off with their tails between their legs. Afterward, Ronan made a unilateral agreement with Asher to meet here in 3 days, stating that if Asher didn't show up, he would definitely come looking for trouble. Soon, Ronan returned home, but he stopped at the door, unable to bring himself to go in. He didn't know how to face his sister, nor how to begin speaking to her, because the last time, Ronan had run away from home without a word, not even seeing his sister one last time. Yet, when he actually saw his sister, all Ronan could say was, "I'm home," and he handed over his sister's favorite flowers. His sister was overjoyed, never expecting to receive flowers from her little brother in her lifetime, that same foolish, hot-headed boy from childhood. In her excitement, his sister asked Ronan if she should add a few more dishes. Looking at the 18 dishes and one soup already in front of him, Ronan quickly waved his hands to refuse. After dinner, Ronan told his sister about his idea of going to an academy. Hearing this, his sister was absolutely thrilled, repeatedly confirming if Ronan was being serious. The thought of sending Ronan to an academy had been on her mind for a long time. After getting a positive answer, his sister happily skipped to a corner. After rummaging through boxes and cabinets for a good while, she brought out a large jar. It was actually filled with gold coins. Ronan found it hard to believe and asked his sister where she got so much money. Hearing this, his sister proudly put her hands on her hips. "This was all to give you a surprise, so that whenever you wanted to go to the academy, you could go immediately." Ronan's sweat dropped slightly and said that this was far from enough, telling his sister to keep the money for herself, because where he wanted to go was the Empire's top-tier Royal Phileon Academy. It had the best professor lineup on the entire continent and was backed by the royal family's massive funding. Therefore, Phileon also had the strictest admission standards and sky-high tuition fees. Furthermore, it was the Academy Grand General Adeshan had specifically named for him to attend. 3 days later, Ronan arrived at the meeting spot with Asher as agreed. Upon meeting, Ronan straightforwardly stated that he was going to run some tests on Asher tonight, namely, using telekinesis on him to the maximum degree. He wanted to see Asher's limits. Hearing this, Asher was somewhat terrified and hesitated to act, but under Ronan's coercion, he had no choice but to cast telekinesis magic on Ronan. After feeling it out, Ronan was somewhat surprised. He didn't expect this guy to be even stronger than he thought. Although it still lacked some stability and altitude, this feeling was very similar to the final battle. Back then, it was several mages who lifted him to the same height as the giant so he could fight effectively. Ronan was very excited. Mages were already rare, and those with the talent for telekinesis were even rarer. He never expected to have such a wonderful start. Meanwhile, Asher was barely holding on, his hands trembling uncontrollably. Seeing this, Ronan told him to hold on just a little longer, as he needed to confirm one last thing. Saying this, Ronan drew his sword and swung viciously at the telekinetic magic, abruptly severing Asher's mana. Asher's face was full of disbelief, as he had never heard of mana being severable. Ronan didn't explain, just telling Asher to treat it as his special technique. But in reality, even Ronan himself didn't understand this ability. His sword could not only sever magic, it could also harm the giant Ahayut, whom even the swordmaster couldn't scratch. Unraveling the mystery of this ability was also one of his main missions in this reincarnation. However, all of this could be studied slowly. There were more important things at hand right now. Promptly, Ronan threw a backpack pack to Asher. Hurry up and follow me. We have one more thing to finish before dawn. It's a prerequisite for us to go to Phileon. Asher was completely bewildered. Did I hear that right, Ronan? We're going to Phileon Academy? The place that gathers all the elites of the Empire? Ronan was a bit puzzled. Don't you want to go? It's not a matter of whether I want to go or not. Ronan, you have powerful sword skills, so getting in naturally won't be a problem, but I don't know anything. Ronan didn't offer comfort, but said seriously, do you really want to live like this forever and waste away the rest of your life? Are you really willing to waste your outstanding magical talent bowing and scraping to petty thugs? As a real man, once you realize your shortcomings, you should muster the courage to change. Going to Phileon with me is a great start. Otherwise, you will definitely regret it in the future. Hearing this, Asher was incredibly moved. This was the first time someone cared so much about his future. He hastily agreed. Seeing this, Ronan revealed a wicked smile. Everything was under his control. Before long, Ronan led Asher to a camp. Inside the camp, dozens of goblins were sound asleep. These goblins were a variant species known as lunar goblins. They were extremely obsessed with gold and treasures, so they often attacked merchant groups to plunder valuables. Every full moon night, they would gather their treasures and hold a festival. Ronan's target was their hoarded treasure. You just need to use telekinesis to move their treasure into the bag little by little. Isn't this task super easy? Asher was instantly scared silly. If they wake up, aren't we doomed? Why don't we go back first and think of another way? Hearing this, Ronan grew a bit annoyed. When are you going to change this cowardly personality of yours? If we want to enter Phileon, we need two things. First is the essential money, and second is combat experience. Doing this now kills two birds with one stone. After a good bout of brainwashing from Ronan, Asher finally began to carefully use magic to transfer the treasure. Soon, Asher had completely emptied out the lunar goblin's stash. The issue of their tuition was thoroughly resolved. Looking at the ecstatic Asher beside him, Ronan didn't skimp on his praise. He hadn't expected Asher to adapt to real combat so quickly. He had really found a treasure. Just as the two packed up and prepared to retreat, a deafening shout came from not far away. Ronan instantly felt things going south. His luck was as bad as ever. Sure enough, the previously sleeping goblins were all woken up by the noise. The first thing they did upon waking was look toward their treasure chests. Before the two could get far, they were discovered by the horde of goblins. The furious goblins immediately grabbed their weapons and charged. Asher was so terrified he slumped straight to the ground. What do we do, Ronan? Why don't we drop the treasure and run? Ronan rejected his proposal, instead carefully examining the sword he had snatched from the blonde bully. Based on this sword's weight and durability, it would probably let him execute about 15 slashes. Following that, Ronan looked up and estimated the number of goblins, about 30. Having done all this, the corners of Ronan's mouth turned up slightly. 15 times is enough. Suddenly, Ronan drew his sword and stepped forward to slash. This single strike actually unleashed 3 arcs of offense. Following that, he charged into the goblins like a bolt of lightning. In just a few breaths, all 30 goblins were slaughtered. This sequence of events plunged Asher into extreme shock. Unable to recover his senses for a long time, Ronan just stretched his body a bit, thinking to himself that his current physical strength was still too low, and he definitely needed to train his body properly when he got back. Just then, an arrow shot rapidly from behind Asher. Fortunately, Ronan reacted fast enough and caught the arrow in time. Following that, 2 people walked over from a distance, claiming they had mistaken Ronan and Asher for prey, yet they showed no sign of apologizing. Instead, staring greedily at the backpacks behind the 2 boys, Ronan did not give them a friendly look. You 2 are terrible actors. Who are you really? Seeing their scheme exposed, the 2 were a bit embarrassed. Suddenly, one of them walked forward with a smile to introduce himself, but once the distance was close enough, the man pulled out a dagger and viciously slashed at Ronan. We are Caribou. You've messed with the wrong people, brat. However, his attack was easily neutralized by Ronan. Upon recalling the organization known as Caribou, anger appeared on Ronan's face. So you're that bunch of trash. Seeing things go awry, the other person also charged toward Ronan, but neglected Asher on the side and was subsequently rooted to the spot by Asher's telekinetic magic. Seeing this, Ronan was quite gratified. He truly was someone he had set his sights on. Immediately, Ronan snatched the dagger from the man's hand and in an instant, unleashed dozens of slashes upon him. Before the man could even speak again, he was instantly sliced into countless chunks of meat. Seeing this scene, a chill ran down Asher's spine. Was it really necessary to go that far, Ronan? Ronan, however, paid it no mind. These guys wanted to kill me, so naturally I can't let them go. Plus, they're from the notorious Caribou poacher gang. They burn, kill, loot, and commit every evil imaginable. Sparing them would actually be the crime. Right at this moment, the bags carried by the 2 poachers suddenly started shaking violently. Curious, Ronan untied the rope, and instantly, a bird-like creature darted out from inside. Looking closely, it was an incredibly spiritual bird. Asher was immediately captivated by the bird's beauty. Suddenly, Ronan noticed the shackles on the bird's legs. These were restraints used by Caribou specifically to capture fantasy species, capable of sealing the target's mana. While he was puzzling over this, a greeting actually came from the blue bird. Asher was instantly spooked. This bird can talk? Ronan just wore a look of disdain. This is obviously remote communication magic. The one speaking is definitely the bird's owner. honor. Hello? I am Baron, a researcher of fantasy species in the Imperial capital, and also the guardian of this dream bird. It suddenly disappeared last night, and I couldn't reach it no matter what. It might be presumptuous, but may I ask who you are? Hearing this, Ronan recounted the events to him. After finishing, he casually used his sword to sever the shackles on the dream bird. This action moved the dream bird beyond words. It then flew in front of Ronan, wiggling its butt frantically. Fortunately, Baron, upon understanding the situation, explained just in time. It wants you to pluck one of its feathers before it leaves. A dream bird's feather has a special trait. It acts like a compass pointing toward the main body's location. It seems this fellow, Orphe, really likes you. When you come to the Imperial capital in the future, you can use it to find me, so I can properly repay you. After that, Orphe flew toward the Imperial capital like an arrow loosed from a bow. The speed left even Ronan dumbfounded, and it was only upon Asher's reminder that Ronan realized Orphe had actually left something in his hand. Early the next morning, Ronan and Asher brought the spoils from the previous night to the market. A merchant, after inspecting it for a long time, priced a necklace in his hand at 20 gold coins. Hearing this, Ronan finally showed a satisfied smile. Compared to this merchant group, the one he had found previously were absolute scammers. After selling off all the treasures, the two finally gathered enough for Phileon's sky-high tuition fees. Afterward, Ronan took out a bullet-shaped object, wanting the merchant to appraise it. This was exactly what the dream bird had left behind before departing. Initially, he thought the dream bird had taken a crap in his hand and instantly threw the thing hard away. He didn't expect that the object wouldn't have a single scratch on it, while the large boulder it hit was smashed to pieces. Ronan then asked the merchant if he had any books about Phileon Academy. Hearing this, the merchant's eyes lit up. It just so happens my daughter is also going to take the Phileon entrance exam. He then yelled toward the market entrance, calling for his daughter. Soon, Maria appeared before the two with a confused look. But upon hearing this name, Ronan's body jolted violently. He then quickly walked up to Maria. Are you really Maria, the one whose middle name is Sion? Hearing this, Maria nodded in surprise, asking how Ronan knew that. Ronan didn't answer but fell deep into thought. It was because the Maria he knew was distinctly a heroic-looking man. Thinking of this, Ronan subconsciously leaned into Maria's ear. You're actually a guy, right? Hearing this, Maria froze on the spot. Then, she looked down at her own body, which in no way resembled a man's figure. She suspected that Ronan either had bad eyesight or a problem with his brain. Just as Ronan was still immersed in his thoughts, an attack suddenly struck. A furious Maria directly gave Ronan a massive slap to the face. However, Ronan wasn't angry. Instead, under this powerful force, he found a familiar feeling. At this moment, Ronan was 100% sure that the hot-tempered woman before him was the very Maria he knew. She was the quartermaster when Ronan was a penal soldier in Alarain. Because she was decisive and straightforward, she was very popular among everyone and had left a deep impression on Ronan. But Maria had one strange quirk. Whenever they made man-to-man jokes, Maria would fly into a rage and slap every single one of them. This point had confused Ronan for a long time, and he had always thought that if they met again, he would definitely ask him why he did that. But regrettably, in his past life, Maria died in battle before him. Ronan never expected that the answer to the question that had bothered him for years was actually this. This made Ronan unable to hold back his laughter, and this laugh completely ignited Maria's fury. It seems the lesson you got wasn't enough. Saying this, she charged toward Ronan again. To this, Ronan didn't give her a chance, directly smashing a fist onto her head. You're going overboard. I let you hit me once, and you push your luck. Faced with Ronan's lecturing, Maria grew angrier the more she thought about it. She suddenly used a headbutt, viciously smashing toward Ronan's chin, roaring out, I hit you. So what? Hearing this, Ronan dropped the pleasantries and immediately started brawling with Maria. This sudden turn of events left the other two onlookers dumbfounded. Once they snapped out of it, they hurriedly ran over. Stop! You two! Stop fighting! After finally pulling the two apart, Asher stared at the scene before him in complete shock. The two people who had just wanted to strangle each other to death were now sitting together amicably discussing matters. Ronan took out 3 swords and a magic staff, asking Maria to check their quality. To this, Maria was quite confused. Is it necessary for you alone to carry 3 swords? Ronan explained that preparing more swords was for backup because he used swords quite fiercely. Maria pondered for a moment, then pointed at one entirely black sword and said, the quality of these 3 swords is pretty good, especially this black iron sword. It's a weapon many renowned knights seek out. After saying that, Maria turned her head to look at Asher beside them. Ronan kept this staff because you're a precious mage, right? What kind of magic do you use? Hearing this, this, Asher was overjoyed and bashfully stated that he only knew telekinesis. Hearing this, Maria had an incredibly strong reaction. Telekinesis magic? If you perform well, you might even get a scholarship. It's basically a sure thing for Asher. So what about you, Ronan? What technique are you planning to showcase in the practical exam? Ronan was a bit dumbfounded. What showcase technique? Hearing this, Maria patiently explained, if you want to enter Phileon, you have to participate in a written exam and a practical exam, and the so-called practical exam is demonstrating your technique in front of the professors. Typically, nobles will show off their family's secret techniques, while most applicants majoring in martial arts will choose to showcase their own unique mana combat style. Ronan was very confused by this. If they aren't mages, how can they use mana at this age? Maria stared with wide eyes in shock. Applying the mana we are familiar with to combat, isn't that the most basic combat style? Don't tell me you don't even know about mana sensing? Ronan was completely lost. Isn't sensing mana basically the same as aura? This sentence made Maria completely lose it. She felt like she was trying to explain advanced concepts to a 3-year-old. After some thought, Maria picked up 2 of Ronan's short swords, preparing to start a special training session for him. Ronan's tone was full of reluctance. After all, he only had these 3 swords. He couldn't bear it if they broke. To this, Maria could only guarantee that if she broke them, she would compensate him 3 times over. But before that, she had to give Ronan a proper crash course. As everyone knows, mana is the all-encompassing primal force. Just like air, it is a natural energy that exists everywhere in the world. But not just anyone can use mana. To wield mana, one must be able to see and feel their own mana, which is the so-called mana sensing. Although the time required to reach this stage varies due to individual training methods, talent, and other factors, it usually takes about a year of training to generally be able to sense it. Applicants who want to enter Phileon Academy must surpass this stage and skillfully utilize their own unique mana application method to even have a chance of knocking on Phileon's doors. But Ronan, right now, forget about sensing mana. You can't even distinguish between mana and aura. For someone like you to want to enter Phileon is practically a pipe dream. Although aura is indeed a type of mana from a certain perspective, the difference between the two is like heaven and earth, because even acknowledged geniuses must put in at least 10 years of grueling effort to master aura. After listening to Maria's detailed explanation, Ronan finally reached some understanding. In the past, he had encountered such opponents on the battlefield. Those people claimed to be aura users. Ronan never expected them to be such remarkable existences. Although they were indeed a bit troublesome to deal with, in the end, they all just became ghosts under his blade. Before Ronan could mull it over further, he heard Maria say, "The theory is pretty much done. Let's start the practical phase now." Before she even finished speaking, Maria had already channeled her mana combat style and arrived in front of Ronan. This speed made even Ronan feel a jolt of surprise internally. However, this surprise attack was still easily parried by Ronan, who then successfully repelled her with a single swing. Maria was also stunned. She originally wanted to end the battle in one move, because she didn't believe a brat who didn't even understand mana could join Phileon. Rather than letting Ronan embarrass himself at the exam, it was better to make him face reality now. But who would have thought that she would instead be ruthlessly suppressed by Ronan, who couldn't even use mana? Taking advantage of the brief window while Maria was dazed, Ronan pushed her back 2.5 meters with a direct sword strike. "Your strength is pretty good. Setting mana aside, you still have quite a bit of talent in swordsmanship. You just need to improve how you control your center of gravity." Saying this, Ronan had already turned his head, preparing to leave, while also telling Maria not to forget her promise. Feeling looked down upon, Maria was furious. "Don't tell me you think you've won just like this!" However, before she could utter any more harsh words, the short sword in her hand shattered into countless pieces. Watching Ronan's fading back, Maria froze completely in place. Just who the hell was this guy? By the next day, Ronan not only received enough money to buy 3 swords, but also passed years' written exam papers and heavy gifts prepared by Maria for the 2 of them. It turned out Maria originally wanted to tutor him and Asher personally, but her merchant caravan had to travel to other towns for business, so she could only say goodbye early. In the days that followed, Ronan spent his days studying for the written exam and his nights hunting magical beasts to improve his physical stamina and bodily adaptability. Soon, a month passed in the blink of an eye. Ronan and Ashel finally arrived at the long-awaited Phileon Academy. Looking at the magnificent palace-like building before them, Ashel was completely dumbfounded, letting out continuous gasps of amazement. Ronan, however, stood to the side deep in thought. It seemed that guy would also be at Phileon around this time. Maybe he could see him during this exam. Just then, Ashel suddenly popped his head over and asked if he had brought the Dreambird's feather. Ronan originally wanted to wait until the exam was over to find Baron, but unexpectedly, as soon as he took out the feather, it began to vibrate violently. Moreover, the direction the feather pointed to happened to be the very building in front of them. At the same time, Baron was about to open the window for some fresh air, when the next moment, a terrifying human face came into view. This sudden scene immediately scared both the teacher and the bird silly. Trembling trembling all over. Baron hugged the dream bird in his arms and asked, "Who are you? Don't tell me it's that group again." It wasn't until Ronan held the feather high in his hand that Baron suddenly realized. "So you are my benefactors." Ronan was also somewhat surprised. He hadn't expected the dream bird's owner to be a rare lion beast man, let alone a quite well-known professor at Phileon. After a brief exchange, upon learning that Ronan and Ashel were prospective applicants for admission, Baron sighed. "If I had known earlier that you, my benefactors, were applicants, I could have written a recommendation letter for you. But don't worry, benefactors. Even if you fail the selection, I still have a way to help you." Before he could finish speaking, Ronan interrupted his inauspicious words. Then, he handed over the egg left by the dream bird, stating that this was left by Ophelia before she departed. Upon receiving the egg, Baron's expression grew increasingly excited. Ronan was very confused. Was a bird laying an egg really something to be so shocked about? Baron was unusually serious. "Of course it is. After all, this is a dream bird's egg. I can't even begin to guess what kind of little fellow will hatch from this egg." Hearing this, Ronan couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Doesn't a bird hatch from a bird's egg?" Baron shook his head. "There is much to be said about a dream bird's egg. The dream bird absorbs inherent mana from its surrounding environment or objects before laying an egg. For example, an egg nurtured in a lava zone will hatch into a firebird entirely made of flames. A dream bird born in a magical beast's lair will take the appearance of a magical beast. Therefore, sometimes the hatched creature might have nothing to do with a bird at all. Of course, one can also deduce what the hatched dream bird will look like based on the mana leaking from the egg. But this egg of Ophelia's contains countless different types of mana, boiling and surging like molten iron in a furnace. Judging from the current situation, it is hard for me to tell you exactly what will hatch from this egg." Hearing this, Ronan was greatly shocked. He didn't expect such a tiny egg to have so much behind it, as expected of a legendary fantasy creature. After some thought, Baron spoke again, acting a bit coy. He actually wanted to entrust this egg to Ronan. Ronan was very surprised by this. "But shouldn't this egg be extremely precious?" Baron didn't deny it. "This egg is indeed very precious. After all, a dream bird can only lay one egg in its entire lifetime. But I figure that since Ophelia left her highly precious egg to you, perhaps she sensed something. Ophelia has accompanied me through many long years, and I want to respect my friend's wishes, so I hope you can take good care of it." Hearing this, Ronan immediately agreed, because he was also very curious about what could hatch from this egg. Just as Ronan stood up and was about to leave, Baron stopped him. "Originally, I was agonizing over how to repay you. Since this egg has been entrusted to you, there happens to be a very suitable item." Saying so, Baron took out a scroll. "This records a location that will be helpful to the egg." After bidding farewell to Baron, Ronan arrived at the martial arts major's practical skill testing arena. Sitting in front of him were the 5 professors in charge of the assessment this time. The old man in the middle was the principal of Phileon, Great Mage Kradit, and the woman sitting next to him was the swordsmanship instructor, the former sword saint, Nabi Roger. Just by sitting there, these two gave Ronan a considerable sense of pressure. After calming his nerves a bit, he respectfully bowed to the professors present. After a brief exchange, the professors directly announced the content of the assessment. "The Magitech golem in front of you is your opponent today. Just demonstrate your skills on it once, and that will be enough." Upon hearing this, Ronan drew his sword. "What I want to demonstrate is nothing special, just a quick slash." As soon as he finished speaking, 2 of the professors burst into undisguised laughter. Every year, there are examinees like this who, just by looking at the Magitech golem's exterior, say such hilarious things. You should know that the Magitech golem's defense is high enough to resist an aura, and it also possesses a rapid self-repair function. It is an extremely precise product of Magitech engineering. Even Schlieffen, known as the strongest genius in the way of the sword, could only barely leave a sword mark on the golem. The principal was also a bit surprised upon hearing this, but he was more worried about whether Ronan would get stage fright from the professor's mockery. However, the next moment, the principal's pupils violently contracted. How could this child have such an imposing aura at this age? He saw Ronan, standing not far away, already poised and ready to strike. Then, exerting a slight force in his feet, he swung his sword at the golem with extreme speed. In just an instant, Ronan had already completed the slash, and then slightly bowed towards the professor's podium. "My demonstration is over." As soon as he spoke, those 2 professors started mocking him again. "I didn't expect him to literally just demonstrate one ordinary slash. This makes it rather difficult to grade him." After saying this, the blonde-haired professor among them looked at the principal beside him, wanting to ask for his opinion, only to find that the principal was already staring, tongue-tied. Meanwhile, Nabi Roger beside him slammed her foot onto the professor's podium, and in the next moment, dashed fiercely toward Ronan. Under the astonished gazes of everyone present, she placed her sword directly against Ronan's neck. "Tell me, who did you learn your swordsmanship from?" Nabi Roger's chest heaved violently, her voice laced with uncontrollable anger. Ronan was somewhat puzzled by her actions. "Learn from whom? I don't know what you're talking about." "So," Nabi Roger changed the question, "did you see my movements just now?" Hearing this, Ronan answered truthfully, "I saw it. Your swordsmanship is very impressive. In less time than it takes to draw a sword once, you swung your sword 3 times in succession." Hearing this, Nabi Roger's mood softened slightly. "Exactly, just like what you demonstrated demonstrated a moment ago. Saying this, Nabi Roger suddenly changed her tone. But you arrogant brat, you even deliberately slowed down the speed of that final horizontal slash, just in case we couldn't see your insignificant swordsmanship. What kind of place do you think this is? Ronan felt a bit embarrassed, because he didn't slow down the final strike out of disdain for the professors, but because he was afraid the sword wouldn't be able to withstand the blow, so he adjusted his strength. After all, this was the last sword he had on hand. However, looking at the furiously angry Nabi Roger in front of him, Ronan didn't explain, because this excuse did sound a bit far-fetched. Faced with this situation, the principal didn't know what to say either, and could only awkwardly avert his gaze. Meanwhile, the two professors who had been wantonly mocking him earlier both lowered their heads, because they truly hadn't seen anything. After a moment of silence, Nabi Roger sheathed her sword and slowly walked back to the professor's podium. Just as Ronan thought it was over, Nabi Roger abruptly turned her head and glared at him. I will definitely educate you personally. The principal beside her looked at the fuming Nabi Roger returning to her seat in shock. That remark just now sounded like she had already acknowledged this kid as her disciple, didn't it? It seems I also need to get myself together. Thank you for your hard work, Ronan, but we have one last common question. There is no right answer to this question. You just need to answer according to your own thoughts. That is, what do you want to learn the most by coming to Phileon? Hearing this, Ronan froze for 2.5 seconds. Past events continuously surfaced in his mind. Then, with a resolute look in his eyes, he answered, I think it would be learning how not to have any regrets. After Ronan left, the principal suddenly burst into loud laughter. This problem is a bit difficult. I wouldn't even know how to teach that. The blonde-haired professor on the side hurried over, asking the principal what exactly had happened. Hearing this, the principal didn't speak, but simply looked up at the Magitech golem in front of them. Everyone followed his gaze. They saw that the golem Ronan had struck suddenly developed cracks. Following a loud crash, the golem broke cleanly in two. The two professors were completely stunned. This was the very first time a Magitech golem had suffered such heavy damage. On the other hand, Ronan, who had already exited the examination hall, was still recalling everything that had just happened. Nabi Roger's aura and swordsmanship were unforgettable to him. Even before his regression, he wouldn't have been confident in defeating her. He originally thought he had experienced hundreds of battles, but he never expected he was still far behind. Thinking of this, Ronan smiled faintly. It seemed the great general was right to have him come to Phileon after all. He firmly believed he would definitely learn a lot here. Subsequently, brimming with confidence, Ronan walked toward the written exam site. After all, he had desperately memorized books for a whole month. He knew all the knowledge points inside and out. However, after the exam ended, Ronan became completely despondent. Seeing this scene, Maria and Ashel were a bit puzzled. Didn't I tell you to read all the books in your backpack? Why did you only read less than 30% of the material? It turned out that Ronan had initially only taken out a few books to study, but he studied them so intensely that he forgot there was still a massive pile of books waiting for him in his backpack. Maria was speechless. She didn't expect there to be such an idiot in the world, but looking at the heartbroken Ronan, Maria had no choice but to hastily comfort him. The practical skills test is much more important than the written test. With your strength, you will definitely be fine. Just then, a gigantic magic circle appeared out of thin air. The crowd nervously rushed forward to look for their names. Soon, Maria and Ashel found theirs. Ashel ranked 12th in the Magic Major's practical skill test and tied for 1st in the written test. Maria ranked 9th in the Martial Arts Major's practical skill test and 9th in the written test. The two of them, having passed the tests, hugged each other excitedly, sighing that their hard work had finally paid off. Amidst her excitement, Maria expectantly turned her head to look at Ronan, wanting to ask about his name. However, what she saw was an ashen-faced Ronan. My name isn't on it. Hearing this, the two of them were very shocked. You're joking, right? Did you not look carefully? To this, Ronan replied that he had already checked dozens of times and hadn't even missed the corners. As soon as he finished speaking, a deafening explosion resounded, and this was the special treatment the Academy gave to the top 3 of each major. The Glorious Phoenix would use magic to broadcast their scores. With a cry from the Glorious Phoenix, a fireball actually hurtled straight towards Ronan. When the fireball exploded in front of Ronan, his scores were prominently displayed on it. First place in the Martial Arts Major Practical Skill Test, 5712th place in the written test, 2nd place in the overall major rankings. Maria and Ashel immediately hugged Ronan tightly in excitement. To think you managed to get 2nd place relying solely on the practical skills test. Ronan was also greatly surprised, and he couldn't help but praise the professor's good eyes. But suddenly, Ronan remembered something. Oh no, if I'm 1st place in the practical skills test, doesn't that mean that guy lost to me? With his temper, he definitely won't let this go. Before Ronan could slip away, an icy voice came from behind him. It seems you are the 1st place in this practical skills test. The newcomer was none other than the future sword saint, Schlieffen, hailed as the Empire's rising star. Ronan panicked a bit and hastily said he had the wrong person, because Schlieffen had an extremely strong competitive spirit and absolutely could not tolerate anyone having superior swordsmanship to him. Hearing this, Schlieffen's brows sharply furrowed. Why are you lying? In response, Ronan simply threw his hands up, dead set on not admitting it. Just because you say I'm first means I'm first? Everything needs evidence. Upon hearing this, Schlieffen sneered coldly. Then I will prove it to you. With With that, the long sword in Schlieffen's hand thrust straight at Ronan's face with the sound of breaking wind, but it was still blocked by Ronan. This is the evidence. If you weren't the first place, you wouldn't have been able to react at all. Please let me see just how strong you truly are. Ronan was a bit angry, not expecting this madman to haven't changed at all. Immediately, Ronan was seen leaping violently backward. At the same time, with a flip of his wrist, 3 condensed bursts of sword aura slashed straight toward Schlieffen. Despite facing 3 simultaneous bursts of sword aura, Schlieffen actually charged forward with his sword raised once again. I admit your swordsmanship is indeed excellent, but it hasn't reached the level of surpassing mine. So show all of your hidden strength. This current level isn't enough to convince me. Looking at Schlieffen, whose gaze was growing increasingly fierce, Ronan got a massive headache. It was exactly because this guy took things too seriously that he hadn't wanted to run into him. If this continued, he might even start using aura. With his physical body at its current stage, he definitely wouldn't be able to withstand it. Thinking of this, Ronan turned around and ran without hesitation. Seeing this, Schlieffen flew into a rage. What are you doing? How can you turn your back to the enemy during a battle? But Ronan ignored him completely. He dashed straight behind Ashel, cleanly and decisively using Ashel as a human shield. Seeing this scene, Schlieffen didn't dare to attack recklessly either. You despicable scoundrel! Using a woman as a shield! You don't deserve to be called a knight! In response, Ronan gave a sly smile. You really are still the same as ever, sticking to your so-called chivalry, even if it kills you. As soon as he finished speaking, Ronan clenched his fist and punched straight at the bridge of Schlieffen's nose. Let me tell you another secret. Actually, Ashel is a man. This incredibly painful blow made Schlieffen's vision go black instantly. By the time he snapped out of his daze and opened his eyes, Ronan had long since grabbed Ashel, and the two had run 100,000 miles away. Right at this moment, Phileon's security guards hurried over. The bald guard leading them froze on the spot when he saw the injured Schlieffen. Lord Schlieffen, we heard you got into a fight with someone. Please tell me that person's physical characteristics, and our security team will immediately issue a wanted notice. Hearing this, Schlieffen dusted himself off. You don't need to speak so respectfully. Right now, I am not the son of a duke, just an examinee of Phileon. Also, you don't need to interfere with this matter. It was just a fair match. I can handle it myself. Suddenly, Schlieffen's gaze narrowed, only because his precious sword, forged from top-tier mithril, actually showed cracks. Although he did think Ronan's strength was extraordinary, he never expected that Ronan could achieve this level using just that kind of ordinary sword. A relieved smile appeared on Schlieffen's face, and his eyes were filled with the excitement and fanaticism of meeting a worthy rival. Ronan, I will remember you.